Welcome back to Good Morning Europe. We are just back here from our road trip, the first leg of this road trip where we covered nearly 3,000 kilometers through Portugal, Spain and the south of France. Of course, this car will continue its journey through another 11 countries where we're going to continue to listen from the people of Europe ahead of European elections in May. But before we do that, let's take a look back at some of the highlights of the trip so far. We are traveling across Europe to try and understand what people here are wanting and hoping for their future. Our road trip has taken us to Spain. Here we'll be talking to people about the economy, about jobs.
Es que la política baja bastante de nivel.
Jose and Danielle have been traveling for the past 7 days straight for several hours each day. We continue to travel with Euronews' Red Sofa, which we plan to set up in big cities but also rural areas to listen to people's hopes and concerns. This region is home to 130,000 British expatriates. We asked how they are experiencing Brexit.
One party saying one thing, one saying the other, and the people haven't got a clue what's happening.
Tenemos que ser España, pero no somos España, somos Cataluña.
You were born in Romania. Do you feel Romanian? Do you feel Spanish? Do you feel European? Do you care? A lot of people we've been speaking to say they have a hard time trusting politicians have their interests in mind when making decisions.
Well, welcome to the Red Sofa, which has made its way finally to Lyon. Anelise Borges joins me here. You've been on quite a trip already, 3 countries. How's it been so far?
Extraordinary. It was extremely interesting to get a chance to hear from people along the way. We went after the real people, real stories, be it small or big stories. We wanted to hear from people on issues they cared about. So unemployment, the economy, politics, healthcare, education, whatever was on their minds.
Well, let's take a look. We've got a map here. We'll show you where your journey started and where it's ended up, because we're only about a third of the way through this really long trip across the continent.
It's a very ambitious project.
It is. And the car thing, we've just seen you get out. So you started in Portugal.
Absolutely.
Really just trying to tap into what the ordinary person cares about. So what did you find?
So we started in Lisbon, and then we decided to go to Setúbal, a small city south of Lisbon, where we heard there was a famous fish market. And we decided to go and check it out. Again, we were after the real story, whatever people wanted to talk about. We didn't want to dictate the subject ourselves. Pretty quickly, we got into politics, and we didn't get the answer we were expecting in that fish market.
Que ajudam a arrasar com a gente. Porque eles ajudam, então eles só arranjam problemas ao povo, como é que eles nos ajudam? Os políticos só ajudam as grandes empresas onde eles têm interesse. No dia da manhã, eu estou a falar assim, mas eu sou político, nem quero nada com essa gente. Eles a ganhar bom dinheiro, que entretanto já fizeram contratos chorudos a favor do futuro deles amanhã, não é do nosso. E eles dão milhões a essa gente aqui.
So, Annelise, an interesting take on politics from the fish market, but what you found was actually in some places of Portugal, those much wider European conversations weren't really on the agenda at all.
Weren't really followed. It's interesting, again, lack of trust in politics, but also lack of interest in certain issues. People were much more worried about what touched them immediately, so their own problems, their daily struggles, than big political issues. As big as they might be, we decided to ask in this small town right here, Reguengos de Monsaraz, near the border with Spain. We decided to ask people about the big story that week, Brexit. Take a listen to what they had to say.
Estão acompanhando Brexit? Acompanham?
Não ouviram falar do Brexit?
Não, eu por agora não.
Não. Não sabe o que é?
É melhor explicarem. Assim só com esse não sei.
Brexit é como os britânicos estão querendo sair da União Europeia. Sabe, os ingleses? Já ouviram falar?
Já.
E o que os senhores estão acompanhando um pouco esse processo?
Não, eu não. A gente vê muita notícia.
Aqui só vê o trabalho.
Pois, a gente vê muita notícia, mas elas são tantas e tão ruins, a maior parte delas.
Tudo é mentira.
But that's why you went, wasn't it? To try and find out what people were talking about. Clearly, in that case, not Brexit at all.
Not Brexit.
So we moved from Portugal into Spain, where here the political conversation is very different because you've got local and national elections coming up.
Local, regional and national elections. Big electoral year for Spain. Big political debate. In Portugal, we heard a lot about the economy and jobs, but in Spain, it was all about politics and which direction the country might take in the next few weeks and months. Of course, one of the main issues shaping up the political debate is Catalonia and their drive for independence. So we decided to set up the Red Couch in the streets of Barcelona. We invited people over Twitter, but also in the streets, to talk to us about how personal of an issue it was, about how important it was for them to express themselves over this independence drive.
Siempre con el yugo de, bueno, tenemos que ser España, pero no somos España, somos Cataluña.
Las dos partes cometen muchos errores y no es que tenga la razón ni uno ni otro, sino que deberían sentarse para tratar los temas.
Pienso que la han llevado demasiado lejos al enfrentamiento entre nosotros.
Entre hermanas de la misma familia, una está a favor del independentismo, otra no lo está, y cuando van a comer a casa de su mamá, juntas, no pueden hablar del tema.
Me parece que el nacionalismo es una lacra en Europa y que la solución para evitar eso es Europa.
La Unión Europea para mí es un desastre. O sea, la Unión Europea es un invento, es una farsa también. O sea, Europa para mí es insignificante.
OK, so from Spain now to France. Here in Lyon, at Euronews' headquarters, you can't go a weekend without coming across the gilets jaunes, the yellow vests. How much of an issue were those protesters across the area of France from the people you spoke to?
The Yellow Vests is a movement that has surprised many people here in France. It caught the government by surprise, and it's still surprising with just the extent and just how determined they seem to be to continue taking to the streets. We're now into their 21st weekend of protests just passed. There are plans for a 22nd Saturday of demonstrations. So we wanted to hear from them, of course. We called a few members of the movement in the south of France to ask them just why they joined the movement in the first place.
Alors c'est une grande question. Pour les simples raisons que la vie devienne très chère. Je trouve inadmissible que de nos jours, on n'arrive pas à vivre avec ce qu'on a comme revenu.
Il y a des gens qui habitent dans des locations où vous n'y mettriez pas votre chien.
Je touche 480 € de RSA. Dessus, vous enlevez l'EDF, que je viens de recevoir 162. Je viens de recevoir l'eau Veolia.
Merci.
Merci. Que 170 €, faites le calcul. Voilà ce qui me reste par mois. Il me reste 50 € pour faire 4 semaines. Pour vivre, pour manger. Voilà, tout est dit.
So from the gilets jaunes to the people in the fish market, you've met such a range of different people. Who are some of the favourites?
Oh, that is a tough question to answer. I think the favorite moments were the ones that were the most spontaneous, like when we bumped into truck drivers at the gas station. They didn't have time to speak to us there and then, so we invited ourselves to get on their trucks and drive with them to try to establish a connection, which is what this trip was all about, and to hear what was in their minds.
What did they have to say?
Well, they were concerned about the quality of their lives. The work that they do is very, very difficult, and they felt as though they weren't being compensated fairly, and so they wanted more social justice, and also they wanted their bosses to care about how they live.
So that's just a glimpse. In 3 countries we've visited already, but this road trip goes across the continent. Romania, Germany, Belgium. We'll be following here, handing over the baton now to Jack Parrick at 12 o'clock today in Euronews as the road trip continues.